training than we've had in the past, I think, and variety of training as well. Today we have training in Tilt and assignments. So it's teaching in, or excuse me, transparency in learning and teaching. And our hosts or presenters today are Jim Shimkus and
Shay Barfield.
Shay.
Yeah, Haley, I know her name shows up as Haley.
Yeah,
but yeah, she'll answer to both.
Shay Barfield, both from the University of North Georgia. And this is the ACT staff, and I guess maybe I don't know if you're going to do introductions, but it's a variety of math, science, writing, and humanities tutors. All right.
Yeah, and Shay's been sort of
I wandered around
working the room here, and so yeah.
And I met Jim and Shay through Writing Center work. You came to the conference in 2016, right?
We did. Was it
2017. So 2017,
2017.
we did the Tip Top training in not this room, but the room right over there.
Yes.
Well, that was a state event.
Right.
So
We went to a
there's two
state
different
event, and we've been to
the conference that
the
was we
regional
had a
event
conference
also.
downtown.
Yeah, it gets a blur,
SWCA.
but yeah.
So they've definitely been here before. So
Yeah.
I will let you take over.
Okay.
I've got your-
Well, I'm Jim. Like Ellie said, my background is in rhetoric and composition and mostly writing center work and that type of thing. But I'm moving into this sort of scholarship of teaching and learning. Shay, I'll let Shay introduce herself. It's easier to say what Shay doesn't do at UEG. But Shay's pretty amazing.
Hi everybody, I'm the lead writing fellow for the Writing Fellows program. That's the most relevant thing I do to today, but I also work in the supplemental instruction program as the Standard English Grammar facilitator. And then I've worked in the neuroscience lab, I've worked in philosophy classes, social human administration services, things like that. You can find just about any area, and I've probably been involved in it one way or another.
Probably.
So definitely really excited to hear how many disciplines we have here today. Thank you guys for coming out to represent, and we hope you enjoy what we have in store.
So if you want to, since we have a small group, we can just go around, just to recap with people we haven't met yet. We can start here and tell us your first name and what you generally tutor in subject-wise. Yes, you're on the spot.
Hi, my name is Steven Castillo, and I'm a peer leader in Spanish. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Brianna. I'm a tutor in mostly writing, but also Spanish.
Okay.
Ariana, a tutor. I'm Samantha, and I also tutor math. I'm Jenna, and I'm a peer leader for math.
Oh, Corey. And I also tutor.
And you're math, and you major in math.
Yeah.
I'm Shannon, and I tutor.
Everything?
But math.
Yeah, everything but math. Okay.
I'm Nick, do biology and chemistry.
I'm Neil, and we're biology, chemistry, and Spanish.
I'm Mason, and I tutor everything.
All right. to the point.
I'm Ainsley, mostly English, sometimes math.
Okay. That's awesome. So yeah, it's interesting to work with so many math tutors. I wish I had had a math tutor. I'm not a math person. My background is in, English, writing instruction, things like that. But we're going to try to give you some things that you can take away from it, no matter what you're tutoring, right? So, and you'll see what we're talking about. I do want to give you a little bit of background on Tilt. I want to give you the context in which it was developed, right? Which doesn't directly apply to you, but I think you'll find it interesting. And then why we were so excited about it and got into it. So we can go to that next one. And so this is a project out of UNLV from Dr. Marianne Winklemas, who is just awesome by all accounts, right? TILT stands for Transparency in Learning and Teaching. And the original intent of this was an assignment design project, right? So, and that's why we're going to talk about that in a second, to help instructors make their assignments more transparent. Okay, that's the very simple purpose of it. There are 3 principles, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And it started out that way, and we've sort of repurposed it for a couple of different things. So after we look at this, I'm going to tell you what we did with it. But we have this assignment, which again, you're not required to do this today. We just want to look at it and do some role playing. So what I usually do is, after introducing this, is you have this sample assignment, right? So, all of you've worked enough to where you've seen a lot of assignments come and go, right? So I'm thinking this table, you're all students. Okay, this table, you get to be instructors, right? So you assign this, you have to take responsibility for it. So I just want you to read it, some of you have been looking at it, just read it, take a couple of minutes, and then the students, okay, after you've internalized it, I want you to ask the instructors questions about how you would complete this assignment, right? Any questions that you have?
Instructors, you get a little room to improv.
Yes, you can definitely improv here, just kind of be creative. When you're coming up with questions, a little bit of background on this. This is an assignment that comes from the UNLV website for TELT. We and other people have used this before as an example. Shane and I are trying to find some other examples, but the ones that we came up with, if we showed them to you, you probably wouldn't believe them. So we thought you'd think we were joking. So
Well, and they don't fit on one slide.
yeah, they wouldn't fit on one slide. Like some of the ones that are better examples are like 5 pages long and things like that, right? So we decided to keep it kind of succinct with this one.
Also, just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you've already figured out your entire philosophy of life. That's what I thought.
Yeah. That's one of our fun parts. So does everybody at least have a couple of questions? All you students have at least a couple of questions to ask of the instructor so far? Some of you are kind of, yeah, that's a good luck. All right, so instructors, get ready. Let's just go around as students. Do you have a question as to how to complete this assignment? You're in this class.
My first question would be, what format is this being written in?
Okay.
So
All right,
it's
fair
not
enough.
mentioned whether it's MLA, APA, or anything of that nature.
Right, I saw you making notes. You were obviously very, very diligent in analyzing. Okay, that's kind of an issue, right? That's one thing off the bat that would be nice to know. Right?
Instructors, what is the answer to that? Is it APA, MLA?
Yeah, what do you think, instructors?
Really?
What would be, oh, never mind.
Go ahead. Go ahead. What's another student question?
No, I was about to answer a student question. I realized I can't.
You can. Do you want to graduate to instructor?
No, it's
Okay. All right. What students? What other questions do you have? That's something to start with.
psychological topic is kind of vast. What specific psychological topics are included in this group?
Anybody want to jump in on that and answer
It
that?
kind of could be like, you know.
I think at some point in the prompt it mentioned anything that had been covered in class.
Oh, okay. That's a good
What has been
out. I
covered
like
in
that.
class?
I like that. Refer to class notes. Okay.
Just for a bit of cynicism.
Sure.
What
Cynicism
if
is
my
fine.
view on any of the material hasn't changed?
And how has it strengthened your view on that topic?
I do the topic material.
Make something up, Mason.
I like that. That's okay. That's a good exchange right
What's a
there.
quality source? Peer reviewed? Where did I find that? Google Scholar. Galileo.
You were on the ball. Did you write this?
No, I'm just really good at.
Okay, you are good at
making things
that.
up and
Okay,
saying
that's
them.
good. I like that. Does anybody have any more like pressing questions where you think, oh, I really need to know this before I can?
In terms of writing quality, is there like a scale or anything that you can tell me exactly what is quality?
Here's where I fell out.
There you go. So that's the right answer, I think. That's your best answer. But you see, so I want you to hold on to those ideas that we just came up with, and I liked your response. That's like sort of the best sort of comeback that we've seen so far. That was good.
Did I hear someone say, is there a rubric?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question too. So I want you to hold on to that. Those are all like really, really good questions and ideas, and I want you to hold on to it for a minute. So let's go to our next one. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the workshops that we did at UNG. So first of all, the TILT principles are very simple, right? So you can break it down into 3 basic principles, which you covered in your questions: task, purpose, and criteria for success, right? And you can see how a lot of your questions fit into those categories, right? That you would like to know in this assignment. A little background on what we did with it. So at the University System Teaching and Learning Conference, I was presenting on another topic, and Shay and another student assistant went into a workshop that was held by some people from Georgia Highlands, an excellent workshop on TILT. I didn't get to do it. They came out and their eyes were just wide, and they said, "You need to look into this. This is great. This is the most awesome thing ever."
We had the handouts from the workshop.
Yeah, and in my face, and so and so we thought about it for a while, and I revised a bunch of my assignments based on it, right? And I really enjoyed it, and I thought it helped clarify what I wanted for my students. And then, so Shay, as she mentioned, is a lead writing fellow in our writing fellow program, which is, if you haven't heard of that before, it's tutoring, but each writing fellow is attached to a particular class for the semester, if you're familiar with this model, right? So they'll work with the students and the instructor in that course for the semester to help them, get through their writing assignments. And some of the writing assignments are more difficult and convoluted than others. So we had one that like none of us could really figure out. And so we brought it up in our meeting, and we threw it up on the board. And this is the one that we're talking about, where it's several pages long, multi-genre. There are many different objectives within it. And we were just kind of scratching our heads, and then we all kind of at the same time went, we could just tilt this for ourselves, right? We can just break it down, dissect it. This part is a task. That's how we explain that. This part actually goes to purpose, so we put that over there. This part, where's the criteria, right? And so that's what we started doing. So we called it reverse tilting, and that's been sort of our focus for a while. So that particularly up front, right, when a student is having trouble getting started with an assignment, or they're part way into it and they're like, I don't know where to go from here, we found that if we can think in those terms, right, and that way we make the assignment more transparent, even if the instructor hasn't, right? We make it transparent for ourselves and the other students. Does that make sense? So these are some principles we kind of go by. Now, a disclaimer. I like disclaimers. I'm going to only stick to like 2 or 3. I usually do a lot. We've given this presentation quite a few times, and some people, kind of object to, like, well, wait a minute, what if all instructors did this? It would be terrible because all their assignments would look alike, right? That's an objection we actually got that I was not prepared for when it came up, right? 2 things on that. First, if everybody in college created transparent assignments, I would not lose any sleep over it, okay? That's like a problem that I don't think is a problem, okay? What if all the instructors made their assignments better written? I'm not worried about that. 2, from an instructor's standpoint, I don't always explicitly list the task, purpose, and criteria in a written document to my students. What I might do is I might write out the purpose, I might give them the criteria, a rubric for example, and then I might talk about our task in class, right? I'm still covering it, but my assignment doesn't have to all look like every other assignment. Does that make sense? So a lot of times, if my students are engaged in a project that takes us a few weeks or all semester or something, I will stop class and go, all right, here are the steps. I'll write them on the board and go, we should be on number 3. If you're not, you should be worried, right? So I will explain some elements of it in class, but I always stick to the task, purpose, and criteria. And we'll talk about how those look. So you can see from just this very brief description how you can classify different parts of purpose, task, and criteria for success. Purpose is very important. We encourage instructors to lay out what skills will be practiced, what knowledge they can gain from this assignment, and this will come up later. Long-term relevance to the students' lives. Like, right? Why are you doing this? I don't know about you, but maybe you've had assignments before and you received them and you think, why am I doing this? Okay, that's a fairly common experience.
It's got to be more than to get an A in Spanish.
Right, it's something other than I don't want to fail, right? That, you know, why am I doing this? What do I gain from this? So we ask instructors to be explicit about that. And the task, what the students need to do, how to do it. I think steps are very important. I like to give those to my students. You should do this first, the second. Prioritize sometimes. Because you can see from that assignment we gave, which honestly, that sample assignment is a fairly normal looking assignment. It doesn't look horrible, right, at first glance. But as you pointed out, how do we know if we've succeeded, right? So you can have a checklist or a rubric in advance so that people can evaluate what they're doing. Models are good. Sometimes simply just a bullet point list. These things should be included, and say it should be in APA format or whatever, right? So let's see what we have next year. So and purpose is probably my favorite one. That's probably my favorite one. Let's dig into that a little bit. And we often ask instructors to, as I pointed out, indicate how these are linked to like the institutional learning outcomes and maybe the outcomes that are listed in their syllabus, right? Because we've all seen the standard syllabus. Sometimes it's hard to figure out how an assignment connects to those objectives, right? So we ask instructors to link those. And again, describe how there's going to be some sort of long-term gain with these knowledge and skills. This is some sample wording. You can just see that right there. Whether it's skills or knowledge. And I'm a big proponent, since I teach a lot of writing, of explaining, hey, this assignment will help you practice these 3 things. And then I never, nobody ever comes back and says, why am I doing this? So let's go to.
Can we actually ask
Yeah.
the audience about what they see on this sheet that looks like purpose as we go?
Yes,
I'd like to hear
if
from
you want to, like, I think somebody did mention something, but like, what in there might look like a purpose, as in what skills or knowledge would be gained if you complete this assignment successfully.
You should potentially introduce students to ideas. No, this assignment in particular.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
On the psychological topic. So
Okay.
you gain a deeper understanding of a psychological topic that relates to your life.
Okay, so that's there. A deep understanding of the psychological topic that relates to your life. So that's good, right? That tells you how it could connect to your future, right? Is there any other wording there that could pertain to purpose?
You're looking for something that like changed your view, so you're looking back and analyzing stuff in the class.
Yeah, so that wording right there, that sort of reflective, we see if your views have changed, right? So that would go to purpose. But you see how, like, with something like this, if somebody comes to you and they have this assignment, right? And, all that stuff is kind of buried in there, right?
Good job
And,
digging it up.
particularly if this is like your first semester, and you're getting these types of things thrown at you, you can see how, like, one big chunk of text like that just looks like one big chunk of text. Right, and so, but you're already starting to tease out how you could explain it to people, right? Like I said, purpose is my favorite, but I like task also. So one thing we encourage people to do is explain things in more depth than they think is necessary. That's key to that, because a lot of instructors, this is a well-known thing, have expert blind spot, right? By the time you get a PhD in whatever, you've internalized so much that you're not conscious of what you do, right? And so all these sub-processes and things, you just take it for granted. So you go, well, of course, do this thing, right? And so, but we ask everybody to be way more explicit than they even think is necessary when they're describing the task for the assignment. One of the things I like to do is identify the audience for the assignment. This is Shay's favorite, scaffold assignments. You can see that, like, there's a couple of different things going on in this one. We could have showed you a more complicated one that would have, like, different genres that happen at different times, and it's all supposed to be welded into one gigantic piece of writing, which is very difficult. And so I always encourage people to stage the assignment whenever possible. You know, don't have like, okay, go and interview somebody, blah, 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 and then video yourself talking about the interview. Then write a poem about the video that you did for the interview. Then write a poem on a paper mache piece of something that you created for the, you know what I mean? Because like for me, I read that and I go, interview, stop. Like that's a thing in itself, you know what I mean? So I've seen a lot of assignments, you know, over the past 15, 20 years that have so many different stages in it that in themselves are a difficult thing that you need to work through. You know, just interviewing people is a project. You know what I mean? It's not something you just, I'm going to do that tomorrow, you know. And so when I encourage instructors to break down those assignments, figure out, you know, okay, do this, collect this information, now move on, do something with that information. And for the writing people here, one of the things I like to do is low stakes or no stakes, short, informal writing assignments, writing to learn assignments. That could be really helpful. And also, this is one that I've done myself, dog food the assignment, which comes from the saying, eat your own dog food before you sell it, right? So we ask instructors, you know, try to do one of your own assignments, see what it would take. And I told Mariko last night that, like, you know, when I was in grad school, I tried to do all these edgy, cool assignments, and I looked back and I actually pulled one up and I was like, I actually could not do this assignment that I wrote. Like, I don't know how I would do it, right? It was that cool. It was that avant-garde, right? So then we have our criteria, which is also, do you want to ask for tasks?
So how about tasks? What tasks do you see in this prompt? And then we'll move on to criteria.
Well, in the entire intro paragraph, you have a list of what generally the professor wants you to have completed, but it's just kind of a blanket list. It's not like specific in its material. So.
Okay. What steps would you give yourself if you were kind of making yourself a to-do list of how you would go about this project?
Begin with an outline.
Okay.
I mean, that's usually the basis. So decide what topic overall you want to discuss from the course. Develop a intro paragraph discussing that generalized topic. Next paragraph would be like, this was my initial experience with said topic, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually you move on to the next, now this is my new experience after the course, blah, 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 and then go on to your conclusion.
Nice. All right. Sounds like a good plan.
So you're already translating this assignment, which we all agree is not horrible, but not the clearest, right? Which is great. You know,
Bringing
you're
in
already
some of your
kind of
own-
dissecting it.
So bringing in some of your own past experiences on other projects, it sounds like, to figure out, oh, well, I've used an outline before, so maybe that'll help me here. Good. Nice. Okay. Ready for criteria?
So this is one we ask of instructors, you know, to explain to people what the characteristics of the final product would look like if it's successful. When possible, we ask instructors to give examples, right? We can always discuss examples in class beforehand. That's a good technique. None of these are, you know, right or wrong. They're all just pretty good. And like I said, a checklist of characteristics of successful work. We've all seen some sort of rubric, right? I used to not be a fan of rubrics. I am a fan of them now. I think they're a great way, not just to justify a grade, but they're a good way to communicate your values to your students. You know, this is what we're looking for in this, and also to help you think about, am I really meeting the objectives that I want for this assignment, right? Also make clear what is unacceptable work as well, which also can be tricky because sometimes when you show people a negative example, that sticks with them and then they will use that as the positive example. So I'm a little bit leery of that one, but it can work in certain cases. So we did mention with this one, The criteria, what is the criteria for success? It would be nice to have a rubric, right? What else? Is there, did we see any other criteria in there?
Well, they want it double spaced, 12-point font with your name in the header and a title at the top of the page.
Okay, that's nice, that's criteria, that at least tells us something about the formatting, right? So we got some criteria there. We know that we have to do that to succeed. What other criteria is in there? You picked out a couple of words that I thought were interesting.
I mean, it has the number of pages.
So that's nice, the number of pages is important, but those are all mechanical things that we would need to know to complete this. What other, there were some terms though that we picked out that would actually go to criteria that might be a little tricky, right?
I think I know you said writing quality.
Writing quality.
What does writing quality actually mean?
Right, in this context, what does quality writing mean, right? And you talked about, like credible sources. Do we have an example of that? Would be nice, right? Some sort of example. So you can see how, you can Windex this assignment. You can make it a lot more transparent if you want to, right?
I love how following instructions is part of the instructions. As if
Yes,
that,
yes.
why do we have the instructions in the first place if not to follow them? But yeah,
Yes.
so hopefully once we tilt it, we don't need to tell them to follow the instructions because the instructions.
Right, because the instructions are apparent, right? That's, yeah.
So I think in a moment we'll talk a little bit more in depth about scaffolding, but before we do that, I want to take just a minute to kind of broaden this out a little bit because I know we come from our writing background, but I want to think a little bit when you're in math, for instance, there is a reason that you're doing these. Maybe it's a word problem or maybe it's figure out which equation to use to figure out what's on this graph. So kind of be translating in your head how you can still think about purpose, task, and criteria. And we'll have a good discussion about that, I think, afterward when we get to hear from everybody about their different disciplines.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear the thoughts from multidisciplinary people.
So who knows what scaffolding is? What can you tell me about that? We've got a few psychology people.
I mean, scaffolding is just where you kind of build smaller assignments to get to the larger ones. So you kind of move them from, like, maybe for math, like what's 2 + 2, and then you can move them all the way up to like graphing.
Okay, cool. What else? We can go literal with it too.
Right.
Like the stuff workers climb on.
Yeah, so
From an engineering perspective, yeah.
Now, does that scaffolding stick around after the building is done being built, or they just leave it up there and take it away, right? Yeah, and then we try to see, does that building still stand? We hope so, right? So that's one of the things that we're trying to build with Tilt. We want them to be able to still do this even when we're not there to tutor them anymore. So this comes from a text by Jennifer Hammond, great book on scaffolding. Scaffolding, as most will be aware, is placed around the outside of the building to allow builders access to the emerging structure as it rises from the ground. Once the building is able to support itself, the builder removes the scaffolding. In the same way that builders provide essential but temporary support, teachers and tutors need to provide temporary supporting structures that will assist learners to develop new understandings, new concepts, and new abilities. As the learner develops control of these, so teachers need to withdraw that support, only to provide further support for extended or new tasks, understandings, and concepts. So, it doesn't always extend all the way into the reality side of the metaphor. We can't start taking the scaffolding underneath down and build on top of it, but in our tutoring, that's something that we can do. We can start to, once we've told them what a comma splice is or said, what is an operational definition, then we can go back and ask them, well, what do you remember about operational definitions, things like that, so that they are relying a little bit more on themselves. You'll see where that connects in just a minute. How about zones of proximal development? This is really just more a term to give you guys so that if you floating around with these other things, don't worry too much about all the acronym and whatnot, but zones of proximal development, or ZPD, comes from Vygotsky. The zone of proximal development is the range of activity between what a learner can accomplish alone and what he or she can accomplish with the help or interaction of adults and or peers. So as I'm, kind of stirring all these things together, I have a lot of mental images of buildings and levels and what it's like from the student perspective too. You can think about this in connection with the classes that you're in as students. When you are pushed to that area that's still kind of new, kind of, murky, you're not quite sure where you are in it yet, but you're bumping into things and finding out what they are as you go, right? So as tutors, we can kind of help them get more comfortable into those areas, while at the same time, once they're comfortable, we can take away that support so that they realize, okay, I can't do this by myself. So where do you think students learn most effectively on this quadrant? So we've got low challenge, low support, high challenge, low support, low challenge,